Using the Power BI web version, I've clicked on Create New Report. We need to add in our data. Our data is coming from an Excel file, so I'll click Excel. I'm going to upload the file and go ahead and browse and locate the file where you've downloaded it. Mine is in my downloads, Lab 6.2 data. To finish uploading, I'll have to sign in to my account. Once it's connected, go ahead and click Next. We'll then select the tables that we want to import into Power BI. I want the customer, product, and sales transaction tables. It shows a preview of each of those if you want to review that. Go ahead and click on Create. It does take a few seconds for it to prepare and load the data into Power BI. The data has now been loaded into Power BI, and I can see that all three of those tables are on the right side. If you expand them, you can see each of those columns or variables within those tables. We don't have a variable or column that calculates total sales revenue. We only have the order quantity. So we'll have to create this new variable for sales revenue. Click on Open Data Model at the top, and if this isn't at the top of your canvas, go ahead and toggle between the mobile layout to the web layout, and it'll make that button appear. Open Data Model. This now shows us a holistic view of each of those three tables and the variables within them. Within the sales transaction table, we want to create a new column. So click on the sales transaction table and then select New Column. We're going to call this column Total Sales Revenue, and then an equal sign. We know that revenue is equal to the quantity of items we sell times the price. So the quantity represented by the variable in the sales table, sales transaction, sales order quantity sold. That counts how many cases of beer I sell. Then we want to multiply this times the price of each product. So the quantity sold times the price. But notice if we just type price, we don't get the variable that we need. We get different functions. That's because the price variable is not in my sales transaction table. It's in a related table, the products table. Product sales price is what I need to reference. To reference a variable in another table, I use the related function. So type related, and then it brings up other variables and other tables that I can pull from. And I want to select the product sales price. So that will take my sales quantity sold times the sales price to equal total sales revenue. Go ahead and click Enter. And it appears on the right-hand side in the list. Let's format this in the Properties column. It's formatted as a whole number. We want to format that as currency. We'll create one other variable while we're here. Click on the sales transaction table, and instead of new column, select a new measure. Rather than a new column of data, several records, this new measure is just one particular number. And we want it to be today's date. So I'm going to call it today, and it's equal to the today function in Power BI. Anything with the f of x next to it means it's a function in Power BI. And this just returns today's date. I'll click Enter. Notice on the right-hand side, the today measure appears. It also has a properties column. And I want to format this, rather than the long date, let's just choose the short date. We can now go back to the other tab. We're in the Data Model tab, go back to the original Report tab. You may need to refresh using this button up here to bring those variables back into the canvas. And now my today measure and total sales revenue column show up. Let's now create the tree map. The tree map is located in the visualizations menu here, and it's this one. If you hover over it, it says tree map. Go ahead and click that one time, and an empty tree map appears. So we'll need to fill it with our data. I want to fill it with my total sales revenue, so put a checkbox next to that. Right now it's just calculating the entire sum of total sales revenue, but we want to break that down by product type or by the beer type. So under the products table, expand that, and then click on product description. It now breaks up the sales revenue by beer type. I'll make it a little bit bigger so it's easier to see. You can hover over each of those squares and it shows the beer type and the sum of total sales revenue. Let's clean this up a little bit. We're required to show this as a percent of the total or a proportion. In the build visualization options, under values, it's sum of total sales. Click on the drop-down menu. And in this menu, click show value as percent of grand total. Now when you hover over, it shows percent GT sum of total sales, and it's changed now to a percent. So stout was 16.86% of our total sales. Let's do a few things to clean up this visualization and make it a little more professional looking. Rather than percent GT sum of total sales revenue, let's rename that so it's a little more readable. Go back to that drop-down menu, and we're going to select rename for this visual. In the text box that appears, go ahead and clear out that original name, and let's call it simply percent of sales. Now when you hover over, it cleans it up a little bit. Let's do the same thing for product underscore description. That's under the category field. Select its drop-down menu, rename for this visual, and let's call it beer type with a colon. It makes the tree map a little easier to read. Click out of the tree map, and then let's create a small table with some text and today's date. I'm going to select total sales revenue and our today measure. The default is a bar chart, but let's change that to a table. Let's make the text a little bigger. Click on Format Visual. Select Values, and then we can adjust the size and make it all bigger. And we can do that for the column headers as well. If you scroll down, let's make those maybe even bigger, 22. Go ahead and click out of the table. And now notice when we click on one of the boxes in the tree map, the sum of total sales revenue automatically updates in our table. So we can see what both the actual total dollar amount is and the percent of the sales. After you've clicked one of the boxes, if you want to select all of them again, simply click on the same box again, and then it reselects the entire tree map. Let's look at the assessment questions. Which beer had the largest sales revenue? Based on the visualization, we can see that Imperial Stout has the largest square. IPA also has a large square, so if you want to verify that, go ahead and hover your mouse over each square to compare which one had the largest percent. And Imperial Stout did at 28.28%. Which beer had the smallest sales revenue? We're looking for the smallest box in the tree map, and that would be the Imperial IPA at 7.64%. Tree maps are used primarily to analyze what type of data? That would be categorical data. What Power BI function is used to automatically capture the current date? That was the function today. What proportion of sales did wheat beer have? We can hover over wheat and see that it had 11.18%.